Now, the 2024 Euro Championship is on to the quarterfinals. Yet emotion still run high, and not only because of the games themselves, but also due to what's happening behind the scenes.
Who's going to win Euro 2024? And has anyone been made a star yet? To discuss, we're joined by our own Jon Carter, tvpworld sports correspondent. Good evening, great having you on.
Thank you very much, lovely to be here.
So let me ask you about all these things that are happening sort of during Euro, but also aside from the final results. I mean, Ronaldo cried. Were there any other issues? Were there any other topics picked up by the press?
Yeah, obviously a lot of things been going on. Most pertinently, I would say today, we just recently finished the match between Germany and Spain. Great game, I have to say, really entertaining. Probably the two best teams in the tournament, and I would say the real shame is in fact that one of them has been eliminated, because really they're the most exciting and attacking teams we've got left in this tournament. So in the end, as you've reported, Spain came out victors 2-1, late drama. They scored 118th minute, and that will see them through into the next round, unfortunately at the expense of the host Germany. So that's the latest. Currently ongoing, we've got France and Portugal, which I feared would be a very drab affair. Not much going on, but it's been a little bit more lively than I thought, a bit more fast-paced, but it is 0-0 at the moment, and they've recently started the second half. So that's where we stand at the moment. As you mentioned before, yes, Ronaldo certainly is grabbing a lot of the headlines, and yeah, it's kind of, I think he's incapable of not being in the limelight. It's just part of his kind of makeup, where he's got to draw all the attention towards him. So yeah, he was in tears after missing a penalty, but ultimately the Portuguese made it into the quarters, as I said, where they're currently up against the French.
And what does it mean for the tournament now that you mentioned Germany, the host country, is knocked out of the tournament?
Well, yeah, I hope it doesn't damage the tournament itself, because actually on some occasions, it can kind of deflate the general atmosphere of a tournament when the host nation departs. Now, I think maybe it was a little bit more the case when the host nation's a very small nation, and maybe you know, they're very sort of driven by the fact that our country's hosting a tournament. The Germans are a little bit more familiar with hosting tournaments. So a country with a longer tradition of hosting. But I do fear that maybe some of the neutral fans entering the stadium, you know, they might go a little bit more flat. But overall, it's been a superb atmosphere throughout the tournament. I think it really is useful having the tournament in the very centre of the continent. It really means a lot, because it just means that so many fans can actually end up getting to the country. And as we see, when you see games like Turkey, obviously there's a lot of Turks that live in Germany, and they were playing Austria. Obviously Austria's on the border. When we had Poland earlier, of course, very easy for the Poles to reach Germany. So regardless, it's just an easy access place. So I think there's been a great atmosphere so far. So fingers crossed the Germans exiting won't mean a little bit of deflation amongst the general fan atmosphere.
Right, so Portugal is playing as we speak, and I believe that they were your pick as to a potential winner. Yeah. So, I mean, have you changed your mind, or?
Ooh, well, this is certainly their sternest test, and honestly, yeah, I guess I have changed my mind a little bit, and it does owe a lot to Ronaldo, because he's become, frankly, a bit of a burden on the team. Everything has to go through him. He's 39 years old, and he just doesn't have the mobility he once had. It's a team full of stars, but they are forced to play a certain way because of his lack of mobility, and it's leaving them a little bit one-dimensional. However, they're playing the French, and the French aren't sort of pushing them strongly. So I think that maybe it won't necessarily, I wouldn't rule them out just yet. But, you know, if I had to say, the Spanish look a lot stronger than them, and probably the French I would place above them. But I certainly wouldn't count them out.
So now going into the quarterfinals, can you tell us who are the players to be looking out for?
Yeah, sure. Well, of course, we were talking about Ronaldo earlier. He's certainly a headline grabber. Obviously, right now, up against him is, Kylian Mbappe. His idol was, in fact, Ronaldo. Now, Mbappe hasn't really lived up to expectations so far in this tournament. If you cast your minds back to the earlier part of the group stage, he sustained a broken nose, and I feel like this has slightly hampered him because he's now wearing this mask, and you'll see that, you kind of slightly lose your peripheral vision with this mask. So he hasn't quite lived up to expectations, but he's just one of those players that can completely turn a match single-handedly. Other than Mbappe, right, we've got tomorrow's games, so we'll have the Swiss against the English. Obviously, England's key man is their captain, Harry Kane. Now, Kane, again, another world-class player who hasn't really met expectations so far. However, I feel this is a lot to do with how flat England have been. They've just been slow, lackadaisical, sluggish in possession, so they're not really getting the best out of Kane. As for the Swiss, they're not really a team full of stars, but the man that really stands out for them is Granit Xhaka, who's the central midfielder, and he is the key man. He might not be this spectacular flair player, with these incredible skills and abundance of goals, but he really is the orchestrator in the middle of the pitch. Other games, we've got Netherlands against the Turks tomorrow. So Netherlands, I'd say the player to look out for them is Cody Gakpo. Tends to play off the left wing for them. And he's been making things happen. We haven't seen a great deal of high goal scorers at this tournament, but he's already on 3. And as for the Turks, I would say Arda Güler is a Real Madrid youngster, and he has looked superb. Very exciting young player, great left foot, and he is, I would say, chief creator of the team alongside the captain Hakan Çalhanoğlu. Always struggle with those Turkish names.
But you've mentioned these young players. I was actually wondering who are some of the young players to keep an eye on?
Well, he is the youngest of the bunch, Güler, because I think he's still only 18, and who else have we got who's particularly young still left in the tournament? Well, Gakpo himself is still quite a young player. Yeah, the Netherlands have quite a few young players in their team. I suppose for England, that's everything really centres around Bellingham. He is the chief youngster. Again, like we've seen on many occasions throughout this tournament, it is those players who were singled out as maybe the difference makers in the tournament who haven't quite lived up to expectations. A lot of people suggesting they've had very long seasons and perhaps they're just a little bit tired and they can't quite live up to expectations. I would put this a little bit more down to not being in their club sides and, not necessarily playing to their strengths and bringing out the best in them. And I think that might be the case for Bellingham. The French and the Portuguese, they don't have a great deal of particularly young players, certainly in the first 11. So, yeah.
All right, one of the interesting phenomena that we observe in this Euro 2024 is the number of own goals. Can you tell us what's going on over there?
Yeah, it's one of these very strange things. I'm trying to think how many we're up to now. It might be 8 or 9 own goals. So I mentioned earlier, who's the top scorer in the tournament? Well, own goal is absolutely smashing it at the moment, miles ahead of the others. And what is this due to? I can't really single any particular reason out. Sometimes these quirks just appear in the tournament. And I think this is a particular case. But we are on course, I believe, for a record number of own goals. They're just raining in all the time at the moment. And, yeah, I mean, I think some people have floated a few kind of theories as to how and why this could have occurred, but they seem a little bit far-fetched.
Entertain us.
Well, I could tell, I mean, we could go into that, but I think they're a little bit niche as to how this is working. So there's people talking about, you know, how is this particular ball at this tournament? Is this affecting the flight of the ball? Are players therefore misjudging it? There's certain tactical trends which...
rotation of the Earth, climate change.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just the heat out there, players losing their heads. Yeah, I mean, that could well be an issue, right?
And anything else we should pay attention to? For instance, the style in which they're playing, judges?
Yeah, the referees. Well, I would say one of the positives really is that, you know, there haven't been too many massively contentious issues. I don't like it when, you know, a lot of pundits kind of obsess over referees and decision makings. The reality is decisions are made on, you know, split-second judgments, and they are, you know, decisions, and they're going to make mistakes. It just happens. But thankfully, thus far, I don't think there have been anything especially contentious, so it's kept the referees out the limelight. And I am looking forward to tomorrow's games. We certainly have the big team, or the more fancy teams in this side of the draw today. So we've seen the Spanish go through, and they will then face the French or the Portuguese. So this is definitely the stronger side of the draw. The other semi-final will see either England or Switzerland against Turkey or the Netherlands. So we're going to see maybe a lesser fancied team on the other side of the draw progressing. I think it's a shame that the Germans have departed, in the sense that we're probably missing the second best team from the tournament, second most exciting. Would have been nice at least to see the Spanish face off against the Germans, at least in the semi-finals. I fear that tomorrow it might get a bit stodgy, a bit sticky. England have a habit of stinking out the place with very defensive football. This might come, you know, to fruition against the Swiss as well. I'm not too hopeful of too much excitement tomorrow. However, Netherlands-Turkey, we should remember the Turks are the top scorers of the tournament. So they have been a bit of a revelation, and certainly the biggest underdog we've got left at Euro 2024.
Right, so do you think this eventually will lead to a more anticlimactic moment now that some of the best team will have already been knocked out?
I don't know, not necessarily. I think, you know, this is kind of the nature of tournament football, you know. Once you get to the knockout stages, big teams can come up against one another, and, you know, some of the big boys are going to get eliminated. It's just the way things, the way the dice rolls. So, no, I don't think so. And actually, I think it's, in a way, it's a kind of nice feature of the tournament. You know, it's not all necessarily about having the most exciting teams. You know, you kind of need to mix it up with some more defensive teams, to have a kind of contrast of styles, to mix it up. And there's a nice element of that. I mean, yeah, it's pretty... as I said, I'm not expecting much fireworks between England and the Swiss. However, even though both are expecting to be relatively defensive, I still think, you know, this element of drama is still going to be there. We've seen a lot of last-minute goals. We've seen games going into extra time on several occasions. A lot of action late on. So I think, you know, sometimes even if the quality's not quite there, like we had with Turkey and Austria the other night, we had a torrential downpour. The actual quality, the passing, the movement is all very stodgy and not great on the eye. But the actual drama itself is fantastic.
Right. Jon, do you think that Euro 2024 is the kind of tournament that can make or break a player, a referee, or perhaps a coach? I mean, their performance during this tournament?
I wouldn't say so with players. You know, it used to be a bit more a case in the past when there was less scouting and less people were... Just generally, people were less aware of players playing in more obscure countries, and, you know, your big chance would be there to shine on this big stage, and maybe you played in a smaller league, and, you know, if you didn't make it now, then no one would be aware of you. It doesn't really work like that anymore. You know, a lot of teams have scouts in countries all across the world, so they're aware of upcoming stars. Coaches, though, a little bit of a different case. So, yes, could make and break careers. We've got an example, really, of Roberto Martinez at the moment. Now, he's a Spaniard coaching Portugal at the moment, and this is his second international job. He had Belgium before that, and so this is the second time he's coached a team full of big names, stars, and it feels like if he doesn't really get the most out of them on this occasion, you know, his status will really dim out a little bit, I think. So, yeah, there is an element of that. You could also say the same about England coach Gareth Southgate. He's done well in the past, but yeah, right now he's got an incredibly strong team, and you know, a lot of people's opinions are changing on him at the moment. So coaches, yes, players not so much.
All right, thank you so much for the sport roundup. Expert as always, that's been our sports correspondent, Jon Carter.
Thank you very much.